Hi, I'm Dr. Dixon. I'm a faculty member in the history department, and I teach ancient history and public history. But today I'm going to be talking to you about how to use Joyner Library for primary source research geared towards your thesis in the history department graduate programs. So, our graduate guidelines state that in your 100 to 150 page MA theses, you will need to conduct primary source research. And that's going to look a little bit different in traditional MAs for history students versus Maritime Studies MAs, but we are still talking about using historical documents, historical maps, primary source documents to contribute original arguments. So if this were a regular year, I would walk you over to Joyner Library and do a little tour of the special collections, which would look like this. Like it's 1986. This was the only picture I could find on the internet. Wonderful reading rooms, wonderful spaces to feel like you're absorbing the history and archives of our collections. Maybe we would even have some documents laid out on the tables for you to explore. From primary source maps and drawings and diagrams to handwritten direct evidence of events. This is a letter from a Confederate soldier, to photographs from historical documents, and even like scrapbooks from World War II. We have all kinds of wonderful things to show off for a tour setting. I would then take you down to the basement so that you could get a sense of the scope of our federal documents. ECU is actually a repository institution. Everything that the federal government produces has to get filed not only internally, but also archived in repository institutions. So none of them own all of the federal documents, but each of them owns a part of that national archive, and we all can communicate among one another to get documents that might be interesting to our institution members. So these are the two major pieces of the Joyner Library I'll be talking to you about today. Special collections, you can think of that as anything that's more than 50 years old or relating to North Carolina. We have a special repository for North Carolina collections within Joyner. Federal documents, items tend to stay within the federal documents collection if they are less than 50 years old or if they are from outside of North Carolina. So as you can imagine, there is some transfer between these collections as things age, but some of that depends on the repository institution guidelines. So it's a little bit complicated. Most of that complication goes away when you realize that librarians are always just trying to help you find what you're looking for. So the same document might be found in multiple collections, as you'll see. Okay, so what are special collections? Special collections are things that tend not to circulate. It's not the books that you see on the shelves when you're walking through the library, if you're able to enter and walk through the library. Instead, it's things like manuscripts, which I would describe as unpublished paper stuff that is not books. The rare books collection, things that have to stay in a vault unless you're asking for them specifically. Our digital collections, which includes audio files and scanned images of anything that's been digitized. Our archives, that is the records of ECU as an institution, and our North Carolina collections, which is just to highlight the diverse range of sources we offer on our local history. Digital collections in particular are great to know about. There's an interface that allows you to look for different types of things that have been digitized. And of course, anything you find in digital collections, you'll be able to sort of download or play immediately, as opposed to then trying to pull them out of the library. The manuscript collection, I'll give you another little highlight. If you click on the manuscript collection from the Joyner Special Collections page, you will get a breakdown of the manuscript collection. Our maps, military collections, the actual records of missionaries as they moved around from North Carolina out into the world. And I'm putting stars by these as I think they're particularly relevant for our graduate MA theses. Our naval and maritime collections, the North Carolina collection, as you can see here, it's listed again. It's its own collection, but there are manuscripts in the North Carolina collections, and so you can look at it either way. Our oral history collection of interviews, tobacco collections related to the international scope of tobacco production and distribution because of North Carolina's unique role there, and our U.S. Coast Guard auxiliary records collection. All of that is made up of unpublished paper stuff that is not books. And there are some books in there too. Okay, so federal documents as a collection is really well described on the website. So federal government's information, you can see all of the tabs here in this slide. The tab for finding maps is especially useful. And if you're sort of new to this, if you're trying to explore what are the records we have for a particular ship's movement or a particular shipwreck or a particular trade network, you can see the kinds of maps we're talking about. This isn't just topographic maps. It includes really rare types of maps, hydrologic maps, bathymetric maps, photo image maps, charts, all kinds of stuff that might be of interest to you if you're starting to zoom in on a historical event associated with water. So how do you do this? As a graduate student, especially as a graduate student in a time where access is limited, like fall 2020, using primary sources in the Joyner Library, I would say follow this very simple guide. First, you're doing some research on your own, then you're emailing for help, and if you need to see stuff in the special collections directly or in government documents, I'll show you a little bit more about that process of getting to the physical stuff. So first, how to search. Let me give you a life hack for ECU research. So you may have been introduced to the Joyner Library search through the one search bar. So that's that gray box on the screen that one search for articles, books, and more, right? An integrated search that's supposed to give you results from across the collection. That's all well and good. It's fine to use. Librarians sort of hate it. You can also get to one search other ways. Some of you guys I've seen use the library's homepage and then click that one search button down below. And you can keep doing that if what you're looking for are articles and books. That still works very well. But if what you're trying to do is to get to the special collections and search specifically for primary sources, I'm going to recommend, my circle should be down here. I'm going to recommend clicking on right under, let's see if I can do it with the pointer. Right under the one search bar is library catalog. Library catalog. There we go. That's what you click on to get to this page. And this is how I always search our library catalog now. As an advanced user, as a graduate user, you may want to as well. So it looks a little bit more image heavy, but actually it gives you some more specific functionality. So over here on the left, you can search by collection, and that's what I'm going to recommend you do for this particular type of task. Once you click on collection, you will see multiple pages of collection names, and you'll run into that same complexity of, do I want to click on North Carolina collections or on manuscript collections? And slowly, as you get used to how the back end thinks about these collections, you might get better and better at that. But as a default, I'm going to recommend that you click on Joyner Special Collections. That'll include all the maps, all the manuscript stuff, all the rare books, all the primary sources that are not government documents. So here, let's say I'm using Joyner Special Collections to search for Japan map. I don't know. You're getting maps from the 40s and 50s, right? Primary source maps that will give you insight into ship movements and other material from World War II. And you can then refine your results by collection further, right? So you don't lose that information about where these items are in the library collections. Another way, if you are from a public history background, if you've already worked in a museum, if you have experience in archives, the real advanced users might want to consider our ECU Libraries collection guides. If you're brand new to library research or primary source research, don't worry about it. It's a little bit overwhelming at first, But this allows you to search things that are not fully cataloged yet. So in other words, searching in the collections guides can show you we have a box of materials that might have things related to the topic you're looking for, and it'll tell you things like it's 0.12 cubic feet in size. I mean, it's daunting if you've never done this kind of archival research before. In brief, I would say green for go, library catalog by collection name is the way to search unless you're an advanced user, in which case go for the collections guide. Now, then, even if you think you know everything in the catalog, you think you have everything related to your topic that's possible, I'm going to recommend you still consider reaching out by email. So in normal conditions, you can ask a special collections librarian using a form and sort of have someone in the office respond immediately. That's still an okay way to go about things, but special collections at ecu.edu is plenty good enough since most people are teleworking, working from home right now. I'm talking about emails as general as I'm working on X and don't see any primary sources in the library catalog that relate. Do you know any other resources I might be missing? Right? Literally just showing them your topic, what you've been able to come up with so far, even if it's nothing. Or I'm working on X and saw these coastal maps in the North Carolina collections that might relate. Is there any way you could digitize those for me? So asking for scans, especially this year, is something they are working hard to fulfill. They love to integrate things into the digital collections. They love to be able to give you access to stuff, even quite a few things, even a whole box worth of stuff if you've got a relevant research project. So be bold. The worst that can happen is they say, no, we'd love for you to come in and see them in person. Similarly, for federal documents, I'm going to give you the name of David Durant. He's our collection development librarian for federal documents, but he also is the librarian for all of the history department faculty. So he knows our fields well. He himself is a Cold War expert. There's his contact information. He knows them in and out. He can help coordinate between libraries. In general, librarians help librarians. So even if ECU doesn't have something, they might be able to get you more primary sources for your thesis. Okay, so if you get told you need to come in and go through a box yourself, we have papers related to your project, but we're not sure how to help you select which ones are most relevant. Then there are two quick things you need to do this year. First, all graduate students, even though you're already students at ECU, need to register to use the ECU special collections in person. So if you have your stuff picked out and it's all digitized or digital collection, you may not need to go in at all, right? You can, from these kinds of screens, this is one item in digital collections. You see on the bottom left of the viewer, you can download the image at a high res, you can share it, you can see under the details where that piece is located. You have all the metadata to cite it correctly, to use it in your thesis. But what you might have found is something like this. So this is a box of papers all connected to one person. And it's archival and manuscript material. There's that cubic footage measurement. And it hasn't actually been cataloged piece by piece. What you can see is some keyword topics that a librarian in the past determined this box of papers relate to. This is why we collected it. This is the kinds of things you'll find in here. So let's say you want to look at this, right? This might be too much to digitize without them knowing what you want specifically. So your first step would be to register for special collections access. It's a super easy little form. They just need to know your updated contact information. They need to know that you're planning to come in and use the collections. They have a separate system just for those users of this archival material. Once you've registered, you can request an appointment. And right now, I happen to know from earlier phone calls that most of these appointments will be after 1 p.m. in the afternoons on a weekday this year. But you can book an appointment to see specific boxes of material. You can also book an appointment and say, I need help locating materials if you want to do this in person. So that's a very quick guide to using primary sources at Joyner Library. And you have my contact information there as well if you need any extra help along the way. Good luck!